Hi everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. I feel very privileged to be sitting with my friend Jack Douglas.
Like we haven't spent 1,000 hours sitting together.
Like 9 months on Aerosmith.
Yeah. It felt like 3 years, so didn't it? It went like that.
We have a song here,
Yeah.
and I've heard some stories about this, but I know you've got some wonderful stuff to tell us about this.
Okay. What's the title of the album?
The Cheap Trick album?
Yeah.
Live at the Budokan.
Oh, okay.
Remember that one?
Yes, and if I can, I'll start right away with the title.
Okay.
All right. It's not Live at the Budokan. To begin with, it's Osaka. So right away, you have a problem, you know.
Just to clear out, Live at the Budokan is not live at the Budokan. It's live at...
It's near the Budokan. It's in the same country.
In the same country.
But the thing was, when they sent Jay and I these tapes, first of all, it was only supposed to be a Japanese release, not an American release, just strictly for Japan, where they had a bit of a following. And so we had stacks of tapes from all over the place, all over the 4 or 5 places they played in Japan. But when we put up Budokan, it was the band was playing great, but the technical part of it, the recording itself, was just awful. I mean, it's like they had, maybe it was for a TV show, but they had no idea what they were doing. And so, for example, if we listen to the drums on this is what song is this?
I Want You to Want Me.
Okay, this was the hit, by the way.
It was the hit.
Yeah, and it's funny because when I did the first Cheap Trick album, I put this song on the back burner because I wanted to get to it a little bit later, because I wanted the first album to be a socio-political album, and that's what it is. It's like all of the statements in that album are either about drug addiction, male prostitution, serial killers. I mean, it all sounds like fun.
Yeah.
But when you delve into what the subject matter is of each song on there, they're social-political statements. So I Want You to Want Me and Dream Police and a few of the other, well, I could have put, anyway, I moved them. They were going to be on the next album. And I was supposed to do the next album, but got, it's okay to talk about this stuff here?
Of course it is, yeah.
Okay, so I was supposed to do the next album, but that was the Draw the Line album came up, which went on for over a year. That's when the drugs weren't working, you know. It's like they were working on rocks, like all the cylinders were going. But a year later, when we got to Draw the Line, it was just, it was a mess, and so it took a year, a little more than a year, to get that record. But I couldn't do, when they called for the next Cheap Trick album, I couldn't do it. And so I called up Rick Derringer. I said, Rick, can you produce this record for me? I'll executive produce it. You know kind of you've been out with the band, you know what they sound like. You've got to capture that raw thing. And they have a ton of material still ready to go. But Tom Werman, who was the head of A&R, and a good producer himself, Molly Hatchet and, 38 Special, I think. Mm-hmm. So he was good, and he said, I want to produce it. He loved the band. He signed them, and he was head of A&R at Epic, and so there was no getting around that one. You just don't say no to the head of A&R. He
was signing the checks.
Yeah. So he went in, and he did the smart thing, which I didn't like, and the band didn't like, but he did the smart thing. He softened them up, and that made them accessible. Whereas the first record we did, which was edgy and political, Epic was like, what is, man. You know, nobody wants to hear about drug addiction. I don't care how you wrap it up. So they only promoted it to college. That's the only place that got promoted, college stations, and it did very well. But that was it. And so I missed the boat on the second album and the third album. And so I Want You to Want Me, he released as a single, but it went nowhere because it didn't have that same energy that it had live. And so when we did this live version off of this record, that's what became the hit. I think the screaming and the energy. But if you want to go through some of this, like for example, the drums.
All right, here's the drums for I Want You to Want Me.
Okay. Now, there were some overheads. That was it. So the cymbals and the tom-toms we were able to use to get a bass drum sound, because Jay Messina and I had to take the overhead sound and filter it down to just 60 cycles. So all there was the thump of the bass drum, and then take a speaker and put it on a bass drum. So attach a speaker to a bass drum and then mic that bass drum. That's the bass drum sound. And the snare, well, we did the same thing. I think we peaked out at about 3K or 4K, just to get, and then put a speaker on top of a snare drum and then mic the underneath it to get some rattle. And that's the drum sound. Later.
I'll listen to it again.
That's a record plant reverb. Wow! That's just compression. And because the overheads are still in there,
Yep.
that's his vocal, you know, Bunny Carlos.
Oh, Bunny Carlos, like,
Yeah.
Hi-ya!
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So some years later, like 10 or 12 years ago, Rick Nielsen called me up and he said, guess what? We got the footage to Budokan. He said, why don't you just, like take the mix or whatever, whatever you guys do and turn it into 5/1 and lock it up with the picture so we can release this thing as like a package. And I said to him, Rick, you're forgetting something. You're going to give me the footage to Budokan when the record is Osaka. So it was a real dilemma. So what we had was, we had this, Bunny had done a sampler called Bunny in a Box. Mm-hmm. And it was drum sounds from all of his records. And the Bunny in the Box from Budokan was actually the thing that Jay and I had created. It was the snare drum, the bass drum, and the overheads with the toms in it. So we actually used the Bunny in the Box and put it back into Pro Tools and then lined it up to, but things like, for example, a lot of the vocals on the Budokan recording cut out. So we would use Osaka. Whenever there was a shot far away, we used Osaka. Whenever there was a close-up, we would use what we could from the actual Budokan recording. So it was a real jigsaw puzzle, laying in. We've been there, you and I.
Yeah,
we've been there. So laying in different parts of either Budokan or. So anyway, some kids I saw on a posted. They were like, the solo is different. It's a different solo.
You're like, no kidding.
Yeah. What's going on? That's. I think we did maybe a few overdubs on this. Let's check the bass. an overdub. I mean, yeah, I'm not saying that all of the songs we had to do that too, but that's an overdub. How about the vocal? I think the vocals were pretty much live.
I want you
It's live.
to want me.
I have no idea what that is.
Yeah.
Whoever made these stems just
I want
Live
you
vocal.
to want me. I need
Maybe
you
not.
to need me.
not live.
Yeah, live.
I love you
That's
to
live.
love me. I'm begging
Osaka, thank you.
to beg me. I want you to want me. I need you.
I don't know why it's
to
gated.
need me.
I don't recall whether we gated anything just to keep out some leakage.
Shine out the old brown shoes. I put on a brand new shirt. I get home early from work.
Let's
If
check
you
Rick.
say
That's amazing that that's live. Such a great vocal.
Wow, what a great singer. Still.
Yeah, amazing. When I had that privilege of working with you on the Revolver stuff, and she said,
yeah.
it was so much fun to mix because the performances were so amazing.
I think that's live.
to love me. Shine out the old brown shoes. I put on a brand new shirt. I get home early from work. If you say that you love me.
That's Robin.
That's Robin.
Telecaster. Rick on a hammer. He just doesn't care.
So are you putting like a doubler on there for a second?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, I went to the El Rey show with the Live at the Budokan, which I know I was with you at that, and they're just one of the greatest rock and roll bands you can ever see live.
Still. It's just, they're road warriors. That's it. They still make records, but nobody knows and nobody cares. But they still do great live, and they still pack a house, whether it's, a shed outdoors. They love opening for bands.
They did the Aerosmith tour. When we were working with them.
Aerosmith loves to have them tour with them. That's like a family. The whole thing when the whole thing of getting them out on the road was, they were touring clubs, but I needed them to make that next step. So I wanted them to tour with Aerosmith, but you couldn't sell anything you couldn't say, listen, I have a band, They were like, really, Jack? You're not supposed to ask us that. No matter whether you're our brother or not, So what I did was I booked them into Max's Kansas City. and I invited Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley to the show. I just convinced them that they had to come see this band, and they came, and they played, and I saw that Paul and Gene were really impressed by the band. It was a great show, and Gene was so impressed that he took out $100 bill and threw it on the stage. Now that's something.
What year was this?
77?
77?
Yeah.
That was a lot of money.
He threw a $100 bill on the stage, and Rick Nielsen picked it up and ate it.
Gene must have loved that.
He did, and he said, I want this band to tour, to open for us. Jack, what do I do? It was like, that was my plan. It was, and it worked out perfectly. They went out on tour with Kiss, and Aerosmith came to me and said, "What the man? Why didn't you do?" It was like, well, they're out with our competitors. I mean, come on, man. How come we didn't get them to tour? And I said, well, it could be arranged. And that started a long, long relationship of the band, those two bands touring together, which created a great show, a great rock and roll show you wanted to go to. So that's it. If it wasn't, Rick told me he got the 100 back.
Don't think too hard about that one. Yeah, he didn't chew on it. He just crunched it up, swallowed it. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. So one thing though, I really want to know is like, you got them signed though, didn't you? You saw them play a show.
I saw them playing in a bowling alley in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And they absolutely blew. I mean, I had heard of them, but I was with my brother-in-law who took me to see this band. He had the worst taste in music. So I was reluctant until he told me who it was. And I said, I've heard of them. And they were playing in a bowling alley lounge, and the place was packed to the rafters. And their show, had all this great material already, but they had a show that was more like a Carney show than it was a rock show. They did shtick on stage. For example, Robin would get on the microphone and he would say, "Okay, it's time to play Guess Your Weight." And Rick is going to guess the weight of any girl who would volunteer. And of course, in order for Rick to guess some gorgeous girl's weight, she'd have to sit on his face. So he would lay down.
So PC.
He would lay down on the stage, and then this girl would probably drunk enough would sit on his face, and he would guess her weight. And that was, the part of their thing. And of course, with all of the, ballad for TV violence.
It was the 70s, people.
Yeah.
It was the 70s.
Yeah. They acted out a lot of the music that they did, and there was a lot of falling down and a lot of running into the audience. And I was totally knocked out by it, and went into their van after their bus, their touring bus that they had. It was, a tiny little thing. And I said, God, I introduced them myself, and I said, I love you guys. And I really want, and they were doing like a weekend, the whole, you would do Thursday through Sunday, I guess. And I said, I'm going to get you guys signed, and we're going to make a record together. And they were like, great, let's do it. And I called up Tom Orman, who was head of A&R at Epic, and I said, if you don't get out here right away, I'm taking him to RCA, and this band is amazing. And I had a pretty good track record, so he took my word for it, and he came out, and he fell in love with them, and they were signed in probably 2 weeks.
Beautiful.
To a shitty contract that they regretted forever. But, in the beginning, you sign.
But that got worked out recently, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It did.
Maybe you tell me about that.
I can vouch for the fact that myself, I was signed to Bell Records, Columbia, and Epic at the same time. With different names, with a different group.
Once again, it was the 70s.
Yes, it was the Wild West.
Wild
that
West.
was the 60s.
Oh, that was the 60s?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I was actually signed to 3 labels at the same time.
Of course, you have Jack Douglas, John
Douglas, and the Swamp Seeds.
And the Swamp Seeds.
Yeah. So it was, and I think I was probably underage anyway, but I didn't give a shit.
I hope we're not opening up a can of worms for lawsuits here.
No, but I did, at one point, when my career started to take off, one of my managers came up to the studio to see me and told me that I owed him money. And I said, why? And he said, well, you signed a contract with me. I was your manager, like 15 years ago, a manager that took me absolutely nowhere. But apparently I'd signed a contract for life. It was like, he said, you signed for life. I said, will you accept lunch? And he said, yeah, sure. I took him out for lunch, I mean, he tried his best. But back then, you just signed these things. If somebody was going to put you in the studio or put you out on the road or whatever, you just signed. I mean, I went out with Bo Diddley, Chuck Berry, for nothing. Would I get paid? Maybe. So it's
But it's Chuck Berry.
Yeah, but you just did whatever. I went out with the Angels too. My boyfriend back. I don't know how many times I played that song.
And you're playing bass for them.
Playing bass, yes. Yeah. You just did it because, one thing would lead to another, would lead to another, would lead to another. So it's like, which led us here.
Led us here. Here we are.
What else you got?
Well, let's wrap this one up. Anything else you want to talk about on this song, and then I'll move on? Or do you think?
I think we've covered this.
Okay.
The fact that it was the hit, it makes me very proud. Almost like 2 fingers in the eyes of Epic Records. But for anybody that's likes Cheap Trick at all, really go back and examine that first record. It's very raw. Jay and I tried to get the exact sound of what they sounded like as a band. And, it's still Rick's favorite album because it represented them then. Anyway, wrap this one up.
Thank you ever so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. Let's do it again.
Let's do it again in a few minutes. So if there's any comments and questions, please leave them below. I feel like, just to surmise, when I moved to America, every band I worked with here, every musician I worked with here, they're like every musician's favorite band. Everybody loves Cheap Trick.
Yeah.
It's no matter how you measure their success, they influence so many musicians.
Right, and if you've ever met them, you love them even more because you know what? They were never dicks.
Never.
They were always receptive to the fans. They were always grateful to be doing what they're doing. They had that Midwestern work ethic. They were just great guys all around.
Huge fans of music, love music.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Rick's father owned a music store.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, in Rockford.
Rockford.
In Rockford. Yeah, his father owned a music store, and that's how he was able to get his hands on some decent guitars every once in a while.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thanks ever so much.
And his mother was an opera singer.
That doesn't suck.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Have a marvelous time recording and mixing. Leave a bunch of comments and questions below.